Before I show my message to Mathura Pati, I want to show a few quotes from Prabhupada and a few quotes from Mayesvara Das. No learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original acarya. Srila Prabhupada from Srimad Bhagavatam 141 purport. Now we're going to look at some quotes from Mayesvara Das, who is the Guruji of the Hare Krishna devotees who accept the flat earth philosophy, this bogus flat earth philosophy. And we're going to see by looking at these quotes that not only does Mayesvara Das not represent the Acharya Srila Prabhupada, but he is offensive to Srila Prabhupada and he has a mundane vision of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada never made any explicit statement that the earth is not a globe. Srila Prabhupada mostly spoke of the earth in the conventional sense that it is a globe. So this is very interesting. Mayesvara Das actually admits here that Prabhupada never ever calls the earth a flat plane. He always calls it a globe. So this is the only true thing that this guy ever says. He basically clearly admits here that Prabhupada never says the earth is flat. Mayesvara Das thinks Prabhupada is ignorant about the Vedic knowledge described in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. We shall further argue that the reason why Srila Prabhupada called the earth a globe was not because that is what Srimad Bhagavatam actually teaches, but merely because no clear idea of the Bhumandala conception, nor its incompatibility with the so-called globe idea had been established, or even barely thought about, by the time of Srila Prabhupada's departure in November 1977. So here this rascal said that Prabhupada, the only reason he calls the earth a globe was because he had no clear idea what Bhumandala was. How offensive can you get? However, the knowledge of Vedic cosmology had been covered over for many centuries, and many of the details were unknown, even to Srila Prabhupada. So the knowledge of Vedic cosmology is covered. Prabhupada's in ignorance. He doesn't know this Vedic knowledge about Vedic cosmology. It's unknown to Prabhupada. Prabhupada's in ignorance, according to this rascal. When Srila Prabhupada began his translation of Srimad Bhagavatam, he was obviously working with the common understanding of the earth as a globe floating in space, and therefore he simply translated the various Sanskrit names for the Bhumandala as Earth globe or Earth planet. So again, this guy is saying that Prabhupada's ignorant of Vedic cosmology, ignorant of what Bhumandala is, and therefore Prabhupada's just carrying a common understanding. So he's directly saying here that Prabhupada is like a common man, an ignorant common man who doesn't know the Vedas. Where a guru is fully conversant of all Vedic knowledge. He knows Vedic knowledge in full. I'll be showing those quotes soon. But this guy says that Prabhupada's like a mundane man with common understanding. In other words, he's completely ignorant, like a common man, and he has common understanding, and therefore he called Bhumandala as a globe. We didn't actually call it a globe, he called it a planetary system. That's what he called it a planetary system. That we're going to talk about later also. In the absence of a clear conception of Bhumandala, Srila Prabhupada simply spoke of the earth using the conventional understanding that it is a globe in space. This is all taken from Why Did Srila Prabhupada Call the Earth a Globe? By Mayesvara Das. So here, again, this rascal has been offensive to Srila Prabhupada, saying he had no clear conception of Bhumandala. And because of this absence of a clear conception of Bhumandala, Prabhupada simply spoke of the earth in the conventional understanding, saying that it is just a globe in space. Well, that's totally nonsense, that last thing you said. Srila Prabhupada never ever calls Bhumandala a globe in space. Prabhupada calls Bhumandala a planetary system. He calls it a planetary system. So you're a rascal, a total rascal. You're saying that Prabhupada had no clear conception of Bhumandala, and so you're saying Prabhupada's ignorant of Vedic knowledge. So you're saying Prabhupada's not a guru, you're saying Prabhupada's a mundane man. Anybody who thinks the Acharya as a mundane man has a hellish mentality. You have a hellish mentality. And then you're saying that Prabhupada, because of this, he had an unclear conception of Bhumandala, therefore he called it a globe in space. No, he never called it a globe in space. He called it a planetary system. So that's why Prabhupada said no learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original Acharya. You have clearly shown you have a hellish mentality. You think that Prabhupada's like a mundane man who doesn't understand the Vedas, doesn't understand Vedic cosmology. And that's why nobody should be willing to hear from you. At least no learned person should be willing to hear from you. So that's why I've made this video, to tell people like Mathura, Pati. I've made a video clip. I'm going to show it soon. I'm going to show a few more quotes from Prabhupada. But this is the reason why we shouldn't hear from somebody like Mayesvara Das. Mayesvara Das is a disciple and a follower of the bogus gurus in ISKCON. He's a great, he has a lot of respect for Tamil Krishna, who tried to kill Srila Prabhupada. And as you've just seen, he has a hellish mentality. He thinks that Prabhupada's ignorant about Vedic knowledge. So in a sense, he's calling Prabhupada a cheater. Because you can't be a guru unless you know Vedic knowledge. If you're not fully conversant with Vedic knowledge, then you're not an Acharya. So this guy's just basically said that Prabhupada's not an Acharya. Prabhupada's not conversant with Vedic knowledge. He's ignorant about the 5th canto, about Vedic cosmology. Therefore, he's ignorant means he's not a guru. This guy's an offender. And yet people are quoting from him, showing his articles on Facebook all the time. That's what Mathura Pati's doing. Mathura Pati calls himself a disciple of Prabhupada. But yet at the same time he's quoting from this offender. This is hypocrisy. This is nonsense. So now we're going to look at some quotes from Srila Prabhupada which completely refute this mental speculation of Mayesvara Das that Prabhupada didn't understand the Vedic knowledge of the 5th canto describing the planetary systems. The Vaishnavas are by far the greatest philosophers in the world, and the greatest among them was Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu, whose philosophy was again presented less than 400 years later by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. Therefore, one must know very well that Vaishnava philosophers are not sentimentalists or cheap devotees like the Sahajas. All the Vaishnava Acharyas were vastly learned scholars who understood Vedanta philosophy fully. For unless one knows Vedanta philosophy, he cannot be an Acharya. Prabhupada from Chaitanya Charitamrita Adilila 7:102. So here we see Prabhupada is saying that all the Vaishnava Acharyas were vastly learned scholars who understood Vedanta philosophy fully. And unless one knows Vedanta philosophy fully, he cannot be an Acharya. So if you say Prabhupada cannot understand or does not understand the 5th canto, which describes the situation of the planetary systems and the situation, structure of the universe and how all the planets are situated. If you say Prabhupada doesn't understand that, then he cannot be an acharya. Here Prabhupada said that the Vaisnava acharyas are vastly learned and they understand Vedanta philosophy fully. He doesn't say they understand all the Vedanta philosophy but not the fifth canto. He says they understand it fully. And if they don't know it fully, they're not an acharya. So by you saying that Prabhupada doesn't understand the fifth canto, he doesn't understand what Bhumandala is, you're saying that he's not an acharya. And therefore you're seeing Prabhupada as a mundane man, and therefore you have a hellish mentality, and therefore nobody should hear from you who's a learned person. No follower of Prabhupada should be hearing from you. Prabhupada doesn't understand Bhumandala, but you do, right? You do. You're over-intelligent. You're more intelligent than Prabhupada. You know what Bhumandala is, but Prabhupada doesn't. We have to hear from you what Bhumandala is. And these stupid fools like Mathura Pati are hearing from you. They're hearing from you what Bhumandala is. They're submissively hearing from you. They're taking you as Guruji. But you're rejecting Prabhupada as Guru. You're saying he doesn't understand Vedic philosophy fully. He understands all of it, but he doesn't understand the fifth canto. That bit he left for you to explain. You're the next acharya, right? You're going to explain what Prabhupada didn't understand, and we're going to have to hear from you. Prabhupada left the fifth canto for you to explain. You're the next acharya, right? No, you're a rascal. And anybody who's hearing from you is a fool, a rascal, and they're being misguided. And they're not learned. They're fools. Yashya Devi Parabhaktiya Yata Devi Tata Guru. Simply by studying, becoming bookworm, you cannot advance. The real secret is, that is stated in the Vedas. Unflinching faith in God and the spiritual master, then things will be revealed from within. How much strength we have got to study all these books. But the Vedas says, Yashya Devi Parabhaktiya Yata Devi Tata Guru. If one has got unflinching faith in God and similar faith in the spiritual master, Tasyaiti Katita Hyata Prakashante Mahatmana, to him only, the Vedic knowledge becomes revealed. 6 Goswami's Lecture, Los Angeles, November 18th, 1968. So only to Srila Prabhupada, the Mahatma, who has unflinching faith in his spiritual master and Krishna, only to him does the Vedic knowledge become revealed. And it doesn't become revealed to a bookworm like Mayesvara, an offensive little bookworm rascal who thinks that Prabhupada doesn't understand the fifth canto. In the following video clip, Srila Prabhupada completely destroys this rascal Mayesvara Das, who says that Prabhupada doesn't understand the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam about Vedic cosmology. This video clip completely smashes this idea that Prabhupada is ignorant about anything.
Avidya, one who knows. We should approach person who knows things very well. Avidya. Krishna is avidya, sarat. Then similarly Krishna's representative is also avidya, naturally. If one associates with Krishna, if one talks with Krishna, he must be very avidya, very learned. Because he takes lessons from Krishna. Therefore, Krishna's knowledge is perfect. Therefore, because he takes knowledge from Krishna, his knowledge is also perfect. Avidya. And Krishna talks. It is not that. It is fictitious. No. Krishna, I have already said that Krishna is sitting in everyone's heart. And he talks with the bona fide person. Just like a big man, he talks with some bona fide person, doesn't waste his time talking with nonsense. He talks, that's a fact, but he does not talk with nonsense. He talks with the bona fide representative. How it is known? It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Tesam satatujuktanam, who is bona fide representative? Tesam satatujuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. Buddhijogam dadanitam. Krishna says that I give him intelligence. To whom? Satatujuktanam, those who are engaged 24 hours. If one is Krishna, if one knows Krishna, he knows everything. He knows politics, he knows economics, he knows science, he knows philosophy, he knows religion, he knows sociology, everything. Tasmin vigyate sarvametam vigyatam bhavanti. That is the Vedic injunction. If you simply understand God, Krishna, then everything will be revealed to you. Because Krishna said, Buddhi yogam dadamitam. If Krishna gives you intelligence from within, who can excel you? Nobody can excel. But Krishna can give you intelligence, provided you become a devotee, to a lover of Krishna. Tesang satatujuttanam bhajatam priti purvakam.
Okay, so I want to speak a little bit. I'm not actually going to read all this. I'm gonna just scroll through it, and you can pause it and read it yourself. But we've already covered. There's two schools of thought that Prabhupada lied to everyone about the true nature of the earth, and his numerous statements about the earth being a planet or globe were just circumstantial truths. And then the other thing was that Prabhupada was ignorant of Vedic cosmology. So we've already refuted this, that Prabhupada was ignorant of Vedic cosmology. And if you scroll through this article, you can see that the idea that Prabhupada could present something in his books that wasn't directly the instruction of the Lord is completely bogus. Prabhupada doesn't deviate. There's a quote here where Prabhupada doesn't deviate at all from the instructions of the Lord, the Supreme Lord. You can read that and read the note there. Here there's another one. I have not deviated from the original instructions. There's another quote there and a little note from me. Established knowledge, it cannot be changed in any circumstance. So the idea that Prabhupada presented the earth as a globe just because the audience were bewildered to believe that way, totally refuted in this quote. I put here, this quote totally destroys the notion that Prabhupada lied to us and presented the earth as a globe because of a change of circumstances. You can read all this, and like I said, I've already refuted in the beginning of this video the idea that Prabhupada was ignorant of Vedic cosmology. So I just want to show some quotes here. I'm not going to read them, I'm just going to scroll through it. You can pause the video and you can read it, and I want to show them because they relate to some points I'm making to Mathura Pati later in this video. So one point was about the validity of the Bhumandal discussions, and how that because Tamil wasn't coming to Prabhupada with submission, he was actually coming with his own prejudiced idea of what Bhumandala was, and therefore Prabhupada, the reception of knowledge between him and Prabhupada was not bona fide, because he was coming with a challenging spirit. And if you just it starts about here, you can just pause it and read these are the quotes that show how to approach a spiritual master. Like I said, I'm just going to scroll down and you'll see here how the Bhumandal discussion is not fitting with the correct way of approaching a spiritual master with submission and service, but that actually Tamil is coming to Prabhupada asking Prabhupada to rubber stamp his prejudiced idea. So I'll just scroll down here. You can read these. You can just see that Prabhupada says that when somebody comes to challenge a guru in this way, like Tamil came to challenge Prabhupada with his prejudice, then the spiritual master just rejects him, he neglects him. Prabhupada says here, because he has no intention to learn, he has come to simply waste time. So that's what Tamil was doing, he was wasting Prabhupada's time. I discussed that when I'm talking to Mathura Pati. So here you go. These are all the quotes. You can pause this and read this. Now, another thing I talk about to Mathura Pati is the way we understand Vedic knowledge. Prabhupada told us to take the version of the Bhagavatam for understanding Vedic cosmology, but he also said that the way we understand Vedic literature is to take the Mukhya Vritti, the direct meaning. We can't give an indirect interpretation. Gona Vritti, we can't take the Vedas according to Gona Vritti, indirect meaning. We have to take the direct meaning as it can be understood through study, like by looking in a dictionary. I say it's mentioned here about the Pandavas. They're 5 persons, 5 personalities. Kurukshetra is a battlefield. Kurukshetra is not the body, and the Pandavas are not the 5 senses. This is an indirect interpretation. This type of this method of understanding Vedic literature is rejected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and rejected by Srila Prabhupada. So when Prabhupada described Bhumandala as a planetary system, we have to take it as it is. Mukhya Vritti, that's the direct meaning. So I'll scroll down here. I'm not going to read all these quotes. I'll just scroll down. You can pause the video and you can read these quotes. So I'm scrolling down here. Just pause the video and you read all these quotes, which clearly show us the correct method of understanding the Vedic literature is the Mukhya Vritti, the direct method. We can't take an indirect interpretation. Here's the thing about the Pandavas, etc. Better to take it is better to take the verses as they are without interpretation. And then I'll also show you this, the direct meaning of Bhumandala. I'm not going to read all these quotes, but here you see Prabhupada describing Bhumandala as a planetary system, the planetary system known as Bhumandala, and that's Shukadev. Here's Prabhupada's purport, which he describes Bhumandala as a planetary system. And like I said, you can just pause this and you can just read all these quotations and my commentary. Very clear. The Vedas cannot be taken indirectly. That is a mental concoction and it's not evidence. It's not the Vedic way. Vedic way is Mukhya Vritti. We have to take the direct statements. We have to take Prabhupada's statements in his Bhagavatam as they are, directly. Mukhya Vritti. Prabhupada said Bhumandala is a planetary system. So I'll just go down. So like it says at the end, Bhumandala is a planetary system. This is the direct meaning given by the book Bhagavat and the persons Bhagavat. Now another thing was that I discussed to Mathura Pati is how this flat earth philosophy, how it started in ISKCON and it came into ISKCON. It was introduced by Tamil when he speculated in regards to what the word Dvipa meant. And in chapter 4 I discussed this. I'll just scroll down. You can read this. And I'll get to the section. Here, ISKCON's flat earth founder has a hearing defect. So this is what I discussed to Mathura Pati. This thing about the question that was asked by Satsvarup about he's saying here, Srila Prabhupada, the planet shaped like balls or more like plates because it's hard to understand, because they're called Dvipas islands. Their roundness is the roundness of a plate or like a ball. And Prabhupada gives his answer here, and then Tamil just hears what he wants to hear. And he says that they're orbs when Prabhupada's clearly saying In fact, I don't need to explain this. You just read instead of me. You just pause this video and see here. Look, I've got my note here. Just see the illusion coming from the faulty hearing process. And you can just read this. Pause it and read it. There you go. So that's that chapter. So that covers this thing I discussed with Mathura Pati about how Tamil introduced this idea that there's a flat earth plane, and it originated with this discussion here, which happened in when was it? 76. Before this there was no discussion of flat earth. After this discussion here, Tamil started to propagate this flat earth theory. Hare Krishna, this is my message to you, Mathura Pati Prabhuji. Why do you keep quoting from Mayesvara to prove, to try to prove that the earth is flat? This is what you believe, right? You believe the earth is flat, and you keep quoting from Mayesvara to prove that. Well, Prabhupada said that no learned man should hear from one who doesn't represent the acarya. You'll find that quote in the Bhagavatam, I think it is. I can put the quote in the description, but anyway, no learned man should hear from one who does not represent the acarya. Mayesvara doesn't represent Srila Prabhupada. He's a disciple of one of these bogus gurus in ISKCON, Hridayananda, I believe. And he's an offender to Prabhupada because he said that Prabhupada doesn't understand Vedic cosmology, that Prabhupada was bewildered, he didn't understand it, and he left it to be explained by the likes of him. So this guy doesn't represent Prabhupada, he's an offender to Prabhupada, he thinks Prabhupada doesn't understand Vedic cosmology. So why are you hearing from him, and why are you quoting from him? Why don't you hear directly from Prabhupada and quote directly from Prabhupada? Now, Prabhupada said that we should take the version of the Bhagavatam to understand Vedic cosmology, and he said that Krishna wrote that 5th canto. All them purports to the 5th canto were written, Prabhupada said, by Krishna himself. That Prabhupada said that Krishna wrote the Bhagavatam, that he was the instrument. This knowledge is known to anybody who's a disciple of Prabhupada. So the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, which describes Vedic cosmology, was written by Krishna through Srila Prabhupada. And Krishna tells us, Lord Chaitanya himself tells us, that we should take the direct meaning of Shastra, which is called Mukhya Vritti, and we shouldn't take the Gona Vritti, which is the indirect interpretation. And he gave the example, like, for instance, the Pandavas, they're considered to be brothers, people, and so if you look up in the dictionary what is Kurukshetra and the Pandavas, it will say Kurukshetra is a place where there was a battle, and the Pandavas are 5 brothers. That's the direct meaning which one can understand through the dictionary. So that's called Mukhya Vritti, the direct meaning. And this is how we have to understand Vedic literature. We have to understand Vedic literature according to how it can be understood from a dictionary, meaning we have to take the direct meaning as it is. That's why Prabhupada said Bhagavad Gita as it is. We take it as it is. So we take the direct meaning which can be understood in the dictionary. Example I just gave about the Pandavas and Kurukshetra. Now, a Gona Vritti, or an indirect explanation of say for instance the the Kurukshetra and the Pandavas, is that the Pandavas are the 5 senses or something. So these are indirect interpretation of the Shastra. See, this. So when you go to the Bhagavatam and you have a look at the Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami describes Bhumandala as a planetary system. So what does that? So you take it as it is. You take it as it is. The planet Bhumandala, Sukadeva Goswami and Srila Prabhupada, they describe it as a planetary system. So how do we understand that? By the dictionary. What does planetary system mean? We go to the dictionary and it means it's a system of planets rotating in an orbit around the pole star, around Dhruvaloka. So we take the direct meaning of the Shastra. That's how Prabhupada tells us that we should take, first of all, that Bhumandal discussion with Tamil is completely not very authorized, because that discussion, if you read my book, I'm clearly explaining that the spiritual master has to be approached with submission and surrender. So yeah, you have to take the spiritual master, you have to approach him with submissiveness and service, and that's how you can inquire. You have to inquire submissively, and then the questions of the spiritual master will be beneficial. Tamal Krishna went to Prabhupada in the Bhumandal discussion not with a submissive attitude. He went there, Prabhupada called him prejudiced. He said he went there with his own agenda, that he already decided the earth is flat. He's a Jew. In the Talmud it describes that the earth is flat. So he went there with his prejudice to ask Srila Prabhupada to rubber stamp what he'd already decided, that the earth is flat. And he also had a faulty hearing process. Prabhupada said that the planets are called dweepas, islands, because they're floating in an ocean of space. So that's why sometimes planets are called dweepas, islands, because they're floating in the ocean of air. So this is quite common knowledge. Everybody knows this, that planets are called dweepas. And then Satsvarup, on behalf of Tamil, asks him, when you said the planets are islands, and he says, are this that they're balls, or are they like flat like plates? And then Prabhupada replied, well, if they're islands, then he gave the example of the tree. He was talking about the tree, how the planets are like fruits in a tree, and how the tree just goes around the Dhruvaloka. So Prabhupada clearly said that they're planets. He gave the example of the tree, and in the tree there are many fruits, and these are considered to be like planets. So Prabhupada clearly explained, that the dweepas are planets floating in the ocean of air. But when Tamil heard that, he didn't hear it correctly. He heard what he wanted to hear, and he disregarded the rest, what Prabhupada was saying, and he just heard that Prabhupada, and he says, oh, now we're going to smash the scientists with this theory of orbs, that the planets are orbs. So in 76, I think it was, this conversation, Tamil introduced this idea that had never been spoken of before. Prabhupada actually condemned on many occasions the idea of a flat earth. On many occasions, Prabhupada said how foolish people used to be, that he thought the earth was flat. So he's condemning this Talmud idea in the Old Testament and whatnot, that the earth is flat. In the Talmud, they say that the earth was flat. They used to think that way. So Prabhupada condemned this idea of a flat earth many, many times, and then it got introduced by Tamil when Tamil got Satsvarup to ask this question about the planets being called dweepas. Are they flat like plates, or are they round like a globe? And then Tamil just went with some concoction. He didn't hear what Prabhupada said, and he just said, oh, now we'll smash the scientists and their theory about orbs. So he completely speculated, and that's where this flat earth theory first started in ISKCON. It was never there before. So this Bhumandal discussion, going back to the Bhumandal discussion, the Bhumandal discussion is not the primary source of evidence for anything to do with the Vedic cosmology. That conversation, Tamil was going to Prabhupada with a prejudice, and Prabhupada even condemned him. He called him prejudiced. Although he used different words to condemn him, basically, and Prabhupada says in different places, I made a whole article about this, that the questions, the inquiries from the spiritual master will not be successful if there's not submission. Now, if you're going to the spiritual master with a prejudiced idea, meaning you've already got a preset idea in your mind, Prabhupada said you go to the spiritual master like a blank slate. So you approach the spiritual master like a blank slate, and then the spiritual master will impart knowledge onto you. You don't go there with your own ideas. Prabhupada even said that when when somebody comes to the spiritual master with this challenging mood, or when he's got his own preconceived ideas, or he's prejudiced like Tamil was, then the questions from the spiritual master will not be successful. The transmission of knowledge will not take place, because the knowledge is only transmitted through submission and service. So Tamil was prejudiced, and what to speak of other things. At that time, Tamil was engaged in a plot to take over the movement. Tamil is a representative of the great sinister movement, International Jewry. He came into ISKCON to cause division, divide and conquer. And he has three basic, there are three things that, three conversations with Prabhupada that Tamil was involved in, which are used as some sort of gospels to prove three false theories. That is, one, the flat earth, that Bhumandal discussion. Two, the book changing, where Tamil tried to interpret what Prabhupada's saying and say we should completely revamp all Prabhupada's books and go through them all again and change them all. And then the other one was the appointment of Diksha Gurus. They asked Prabhupada about initiations in the future, and they completely concocted and even changed that. They cut parts out of those conversations and butchered it and put together what they want people to hear. So there's a bogus conversation about initiations in the future, which they tried to use to say that they're going to be Diksha Gurus. Then there's the bogus changing the books. Prabhupada's clearly said, print again the original way. And then the third one is about the flat earth, where Tamil was trying to get Prabhupada to rubber stamp this prejudice that Tamil had, that the earth is flat, where Prabhupada's nowhere ever in any of his books said the earth is flat. There is not one reference where Prabhupada said the earth is flat. In fact, he condemns that idea that the earth is flat. So this Bhumandal discussion has no strong validity, because Prabhupada said that you have to approach the spiritual master with submission and service. Tamil was approaching with prejudice, and Prabhupada was getting annoyed with him. And I quoted in my book about how Prabhupada said, when somebody comes like this with a challenging spirit, the spiritual master will just say, okay, yes, you're right, go away. Okay, don't waste my time. Basically, don't waste my time. You've already got your own opinion. Don't waste my time. If you want to know my opinion, you have to come with submission and service, and then I'll impart the knowledge onto you. And Tamil was coming with prejudice. So Prabhupada just brushed him off, and he said, go to the Bhagavatam, take the version of the Bhagavatam. So that brings me to this point, which I've already brought up. So when you go to the Bhagavatam to take the version of the Bhagavatam, you have to take the Mukhya Vritti version of the Bhagavatam. You have to take the direct meaning of the Bhagavatam, not the Gona Vritti, not the indirect interpretation. Flat earth, as presented by these deviants like Mayesvara, that is simply Gona Vritti. It's a mental speculation, an interpretation on Prabhupada's Bhagavatam. Now, Prabhupada said in the Bhumandal discussion, the conclusion of that was, don't waste my time, Tamil, with your prejudice. Go to the Bhagavatam, take the version of the Bhagavatam. Krishna, through me, has already described the Vedic cosmology in the Bhagavatam 5th canto. Take that. Don't go outside of that, just take that. But take it directly. Take the Mukhya Vritti version of the Bhagavatam. And the Mukhya Vritti version is what can be understood from the definition of the dictionary, meaning when you say the Pandavas, when you say Kurukshetra, you have to take the direct meaning as it can be understood by a dictionary. Kurukshetra is a battlefield. The Pandavas are 5 brothers. The Pandavas are not the 5 senses. That's an indirect interpretation. And Kurukshetra is not the body. This is an indirect. So you can't take the indirect interpretation of the Shastra. You have to take the Mukhya Vritti, the direct version as it can be understood by a dictionary. That's what Lord Chaitanya says. That's what Prabhupada says. So in the Bhagavatam 5th canto, Bhumandala is never described as a flat plane. It is described as a planetary system. Shukadev Goswami says it in the translation, and Prabhupada said it in the purport. He calls Bhumandala, he actually calls it Bhuloka, Bhugola. It's the earthly planetary system, the first one of the higher 7, the 7 down and 7 up. So Prabhupada said that
Bhumandala is Bhuloka, Bhugola. It's the first of the 7 upper planetary systems, 7 up, 7 down. So it's a planetary system. And what does if you look at the word planetary system in the dictionary, it's a system of planets rotating around a central pivot, which is, obviously we know that's Dhruva's planet, the pole star. So my question to you, Mathura Pati Prabhu, you claim to represent Srila Prabhupada. You printed the original Gita, great service. You've got a centre there, a little centre, a few brahmacharis, and you're doing good service. But why, if you represent Prabhupada, are you quoting from a man who doesn't represent Srila Prabhupada? You are quoting from a man who offends Prabhupada, who is a speculator, who is a disciple of these bogus gurus, who actually quotes Tamil in a favourable way. He quotes Tamil like what Tamil says in those Bhumandal discussions is actually something authorized. He's always quoting from Tamil like Tamil's some authority. Tamil's no authority. He's an offender, and Prabhupada called him prejudiced in this regards with a Bhumandal discussion. So why do you quote from a guy who thinks that Prabhupada is deluded and doesn't understand Vedic cosmology? When Prabhupada himself said that Krishna was his helper, Prabhupada said in humility, all this information about Vedic cosmology was, he said something to the effect that it was bewildering me, such amazing knowledge. Like it was even, and then he said, but Krishna, and then Tamil said something like, so how did you write about it? And he said, well, Krishna wrote it. Krishna's my helper. So basically, Prabhupada was just being humble. Prabhupada understood Vedic cosmology because he heard it directly from Krishna himself. Krishna wrote through Prabhupada all these purports to the 5th canto that Prabhupada said we should take, and we should take them through the method of Mukhya Vritti, the direct method that can be understood through a dictionary definition. We can't give any interpretation. When Shukadev Goswami says that Bhumandala is a planetary system, we have to take it as it is. We can't interpret that when Shukadev Goswami is saying it's a planetary system, when Prabhupada said it's a planetary system, a system of planets, we can't impose our interpretation, our Mayavadi interpretation, and say, oh no, Prabhupada doesn't mean it's a planetary system. He's just saying that, blah, 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 blah. It's actually, Prabhupada actually means it's flat. No, Prabhupada, when he said it's a planetary system, it means it's a system of planets. You can't impose your Mayavadi interpretation onto that. That's an offence. That's deviation. And that's what this flat earth is. It's a deviation. It's a mental concoction, an imposition onto Srila Prabhupada's teachings. It's not taking Prabhupada's teachings as they are, as Prabhupada tells us to take them. Prabhupada says we take them as it is. We take the Mukhya Vritti. We don't take the Gona Vritti. We don't take the interpretation of Prabhupada's teachings. Flat Earth is Gona Vritti. It's an interpretation on Prabhupada's and Shukadev Goswami's direct statements that Bhumandala is a planetary system. So this Mayesvara is an offender, doesn't represent Prabhupada, is a disciple of Hridayananda, a deviant, and he's a great follower of Tamil as well. He's a disciple of Tamil. And you're claiming to represent Prabhupada yourself, but yet you're quoting from him. Straight away you're off. You're off. In this regard about the flat earth, you're off. First of all, stop quoting from people who don't represent Prabhupada. You shouldn't even hear from them. If you know that the only way you should hear from this Mayesvara is like how I've heard a little bit from him, just to see his bogus statements and then refute them. You can hear from bogus people when you want to refute them, when you want to expose them. But you're hearing from him submissively, you're accepting what he's saying, and then you start to present into the devotee community the teachings of Mayesvara, to prove that the thing that you believe, that the earth is flat, where Prabhupada's never saying it's flat. Never ever. There's not one statement where Prabhupada says it's flat. So people may say, this is like the thing with Hitler, that Prabhupada said many things about Hitler that were not so good, and then he also said many things about Hitler that were good. So Prabhupada sometimes said, for the general people, he would say what the general people had accepted. Like everybody's accepted the Jewish lies about Hitler being the devil incarnate, the most evil man in history. So Prabhupada would sometimes, when he would use Hitler as an example of an evil person, a bad person, so that would be the circumstantial truth that people, because he's speaking to an audience who have accepted a lie, so he would sometimes speak in regards to the lie they'd accepted, but on other occasions in a sort of more of a private setting, or sometimes it wasn't a private setting, Prabhupada would speak the truth about Hitler, that he was a good man, that he actually fought to preserve, he fought against the bankers who are basically Kali's agents for advancing the age of quarrel. The bankers create money out of fresh air, and they cheat everybody, and in that way they can increase the sinful activities of Kali, the four sinful activities. So Prabhupada, he spoke these two things. Sometimes he would speak circumstantially about Hitler, and then other times he would speak the factual truth that Hitler was a good man, the propaganda was made against him, etc., etc. So sometimes people will use this type of example in regards to flat earth, that, Prabhupada spoke about the earth being a globe because that's what everybody believed, that they believed the lie about the globe, but actually the earth is flat. But there is no statements like that. There are statements where Prabhupada speaks very favourably about Hitler many times, but there's not one single instance where Prabhupada is describing the earth as flat. In fact, he actually condemns the idea that people used to think the earth was flat. And but the ultimate conclusion is that Prabhupada told us to take the direct meaning of the Bhagavatam, the 5th canto, to understand Vedic cosmology. And he said that Krishna wrote that 5th canto through him. So we take the direct meaning of the 5th canto. We don't try to interpret all the things that Tamil was asking him in the Bhumandal discussion. The conclusion of Bhumandal discussion is to take the version of the Bhagavatam 5th canto and to take it as it is, the direct meaning, Mukhya Vritti. And that Mukhya Vritti, if we take it as it is that Bhumandala is a planetary system. It is not a flat plane. Nowhere does Prabhupada say Bhumandala is a flat plane in the 5th canto. And anybody who says it's a flat plane, they're just bringing their Gona Vritti, they're bringing their indirect interpretation onto Prabhupada's teachings, which is Mayesvara. Mayesvara interpretation, impersonalism and Mayesvara, trying to bring their own concoction onto Prabhupada's teachings. Prabhupada never says that the earth is a flat plane, and Bhumandal discussions have no strong validity because Bhumandal discussions have no strong validity because, like I've already explained in depth, Tamil wasn't approaching Prabhupada submissively. He wasn't inquiring submissively. He wasn't coming as a blank slate to understand. He was coming with his prejudice, his flat earth prejudice, and all he wanted was Prabhupada to give him a rubber stamp to say yes, the earth is flat, and then he could roll with it, right, and push his Talmudic flat earth. But Prabhupada didn't give him a rubber stamp. That's why there was so much misunderstanding. Prabhupada said, how come I'm understanding but you're not understanding? One of us is prejudiced and it ain't me, it's you. So Prabhupada understood Vedic cosmology quite well, and Krishna taught him it and spoke through him and wrote the purports that Prabhupada was hearing. When Prabhupada was writing them purports, he was hearing and understanding everything Krishna was telling him. That's why he wrote the purports. Prabhupada's not a robot that Krishna writes through him, and Prabhupada's just like a zombie. When Krishna wrote through Prabhupada these purports, Prabhupada was hearing directly from Krishna about Vedic cosmology, so he understood it completely. But yet this Mayesvara, who you like to quote from, says Prabhupada doesn't understand Vedic cosmology. Or Prabhupada's a liar, he's just lying to us. But I've already refuted the thing about Prabhupada lying to us all. He's never once said the earth is flat. Not once. There's not, when even Mayesvara admits that there's nowhere in Prabhupada's teachings that Prabhupada says the earth is flat. There is not one single statement. All there is the Gona Vritti, the indirect interpretation of Prabhupada's 5th canto. some mental speculators are going to Prabhupada's fifth canto when Prabhupada's calling Bhumandala a planetary system, when Shukadev Goswami's calling it a planetary system. You people just use your mental masturbation to say, well, what Prabhupada really means here, even though he's saying it's a planetary system, it's not actually a planetary system, it's a flat earth plane. Well, no, that's your speculation. That's not what Prabhupada says. A real disciple of Prabhupada will take what Prabhupada says as it is. He will take the Mukhya Vritti definition of what Prabhupada is saying. When Prabhupada said it's a planetary system, then that's what he means. It's a system of planets rotating around a central pivot, Dhruvaloka. It's as simple as that. Prabhupada said that Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple, but very difficult for the crooked. And he also told us, which is my original point, not to hear from those who don't represent. Now, a person who thinks Prabhupada doesn't understand Vedic cosmology, who thinks he's got no grasp of Vedic cosmology, but he himself thinks he knows better than Prabhupada. So he actually thinks he knows better than Prabhupada. Prabhupada doesn't understand Vedic cosmology, so don't hear him. Hear from me. I know Vedic cosmology. This is what Mayesvara is saying. So he's an offender. He's puffed up. He doesn't represent Prabhupada. He has a disciple. He's a disciple of these bogus gurus who've completely disobeyed Prabhupada and offended Prabhupada. And he's a disciple of Tamil as well. He's a Shiksha disciple of Tamil. He's a Diksha disciple of Hridayananda, both Jews. He's a disciple of these Jews, and he's pushing Jewish philosophy of a flat earth. And you're hearing submissively from him and quoting him to the rest of the devotee community. So I say that you're off. In this regard, you're off. Completely off. You're not in Prabhupada's line if you're quoting from people who offend Prabhupada and who are disciples of these bogus gurus. So stop doing it. If you want to present a flat earth idea from the Vedas, present it from Prabhupada's Vedic books. Don't go outside Prabhupada's books also. That's not a Prabhupada follower. Quote from Prabhupada's books directly and show from Prabhupada's books that the earth is flat. You'll not be able to do it because it isn't, and there's nowhere in Prabhupada's teachings is it said. The only way you can try to prove the earth is flat is by giving mental speculations, interpretations. Indirect interpretations, Gona Vritti. Lord Chaitanya, Srila Prabhupada, Sukadev, they reject Gona Vritti. It is not bona fide, it is indirect interpretation, and it is Mayavad philosophy. So stop quoting from this Mayavadi to prove what you believe. I don't know why you suddenly believed in flat earth. Maybe you are hearing from, what's his name? What's that guy called now? That rascal, there's one guy, flat earth guy, what's he called? I forget, Eric Dubai. Maybe you were reading from Eric Dubai, or you, again, hearing from unauthorized sources. You have to hear from the bona fide sources. The bona fide source is Srila Prabhupada in his fifth canto. Fifth canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. Take it. Mukhya Vritti. Planetary system. Bhumandala is a planetary system, not a flat plane. You have to impose an indirect interpretation to say that it's a flat plane. If you want to take it as it is, you have to take it as what it is. It's a planetary. Bhumandala is Bhuloka. It's a planetary system. Simple as that.
So recently, this Mayesvara has been propagating the Talmudic idea that underneath the flat earth, he calls it, Bhumandala is a planetary system. The Mukhya Vritti, the direct meaning is we have to take the direct meaning. Prabhupada called it a planetary system. Shukadev called it a planetary system, but they take it as a flat plane. So they say under this flat earth plane, there are no planetary systems, even though Prabhupada describes that there are 7 lower planetary systems. And again, Mukhya Vritti, direct meaning means they're systems of planets. So according to Mayesvara's latest mental speculation, underneath the earth there is no 7 planetary systems, but he's just giving this this Talmudic idea that underneath the earth there's just these caves and this it's just the lower part of the earth. And Mathura Pati here, look, he's saying, yes, it is very clear that the so-called lower planetary systems, and he puts it quote lower planetary system, so he doesn't believe Prabhupada's direct statements, means the underworld under the surface of the Bhumandala earth. So this is it. This is it. What is below the earth, part 2. Mathura Pati quoting this on his webpage, and here again we've got it. So I want to just go through. I'm not going to go through all this too much, but I just want to show you some of this Gauna-vritti, this indirect interpretation of Prabhupada's statements. Look at this here. This is Mayesvara again. He's saying what is below the earth, part 1. The idea of 7 lower planetary systems, and he uses speech marks because he doesn't believe it, may create the impression in the person's mind of 7 layers of many globe-like planets orbiting in space somewhat below the assumed Earth globe. The term planetary systems was Srila Prabhupada's choice of words, and it is a term that he used consistently, but our modern conception of what might constitute planetary systems is wholly different from what is being described by Shukadev Goswami as 7 huge realms within one vast earth circle. From the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada was translating verses relating to Bhumandala without even have a map or image of Bhumandala to help him conceptualize where each place is situated and how each place is related to the other. So here he's again using this speculation. Prabhupada says planetary systems, he means planetary systems, and here you're saying the term planetary system was Prabhupada's choice of words, and it is a term that he used consistently, but our modern conception of what might constitute planetary systems is wholly different from what is being described by Shukadev Goswami as 7 huge realms within the one vast earth circle. Shukadev Goswami never described it that way. That is your Gauna-vritti, that is your interpretation. Shukadev Goswami called them planetary systems. All throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, from the first canto to the last, everywhere it's described, even describes that the planetary systems were inside the lotus stem, and they described them that there were planetary systems in a seed-like form, and then they expanded out and manifest when Brahma created. So everywhere it's described as planetary systems. That's the Mukhya-vritti, the direct meaning. All you're doing here is giving your indirect interpretation. Let's look at another one. Srila Prabhupada invariably used the word planet to cover the multitude of places mentioned by Shukadev Goswami. However, one should be aware that many of the places that Srila Prabhupada refers to as planets are actually references to places upon Bhumandala's vast landscape or within the depths of Bhumandala itself, the subterranean realms. They are not other planets as we conceive them, but part of the earth itself. As we shall see presently, the conception of 7 layers of globe-like planets floating below earth is definitely not what is being described by Shukadev Goswami. Again, he's bringing in his mental speculation. He's saying that even though Prabhupada's calling them planetary systems, that actually they're not planetary systems. So he's telling us to not take the direct Mukhya-vritti, the direct meaning of Shastra, which Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada advise us to do. In fact, Lord Chaitanya says we have to reject the Gauna-vritti interpretation, this mental speculation of Shastra. So here, this is another example of this guy saying that even though Prabhupada calls it a planetary system, it's not a planetary system. And Shukadev Goswami is not describing it the way you say. He's not at all calling it realms. He calls them planetary systems. We go down a bit more. Although Srila Prabhupada has translated the word Saptabhu Vivar as 7 other planets below the earth, they are literally described by Shukadev Goswami as 7 realms within or below the surface of the earth. Thus, holes in the earth is the most consistent translation of Bhu Vivara, and is in line with Srila Prabhupada's other translations where the word Vivara is translated as holes, not planets. This is also clearly the understanding presented by the acaryas. Which acaryas? Hridayananda or the Gaudiya Math? Which acaryas? You just simply go into other books. The word planet was simply Srila Prabhupada's default word for describing anywhere outside known earth area. The true nature of Bhumandala and our own place upon it hadn't been deciphered at this point. Again, making offences to Prabhupada. Prabhupada didn't understand Vedic knowledge. He didn't understand Vedic cosmology. I'm not suggesting by any means that we should change the translation. I'm just recommending that we should try and understand from the description what is meant by adhasta saptabhu vivara. No, we don't try to understand ourselves. We don't speculate. We hear from Prabhupada and accept what he says. We accept the Mukhya Vritti, the direct meaning from Prabhupada. If Prabhupada said it's a planetary system, we accept that. We don't go to the Sanskrit and try to work out what it means. That's jumping over the Guru. That's being offensive. When Prabhupada called it a planetary system, that's exactly what it is. Shukadev Goswami never described it like you're saying. He called them the planetary systems. Lower planetary systems. Here there's a verse from Prabhupada, look. In these 7 planetary systems, right? Read this quote. And then look what this rascal says. Again, one should not take the wrong conception from Srila Prabhupada's English rendition of the Sanskrit words Bilvasaga as 7 planetary systems. Our modern conception of what might constitute planetary systems is wholly different from what is being described here by Shukadev Goswami as 7 huge realms within the one vast earth circle. Srila Prabhupada actually qualifies the translation in these 7 planetary systems, which are known as subterranean heavens, Bilvaswaga. This is factually what is being described, since Bilvaswaga literally means subterranean underground, Bilva heaven swaga. So just look here. Prabhupada's calling it 7 planetary systems, and then he even says it here. He even says Prabhupada actually qualifies it by saying in these 7 planetary systems, and then so Prabhupada's just saying the planetary systems. We take the Mukhya Vritti from Prabhupada that just means the systems of planets rotating around a central pivot, which we know is the pole star. But then he says this is factually how does he say? He says here, this is factually what is being described, since Bilvaswaga literally means subterranean underground. So he just takes an interpretation. Prabhupada calls them planetary systems, 7 planetary systems, and here he just says, well, even though Prabhupada's saying that, it doesn't mean that. This is a Pukka Mayavadi. This guy is a Pukka Mayavadi, and this Mathura Pati and all these other flat-earth dumbheads are listening to this guy, submissively hearing him. The acaryas in their commentaries, see below, which acaryas? We are only interested in Prabhupada. Prabhupada's our acharya. We don't go beyond Prabhupada's books. We're not prostitutes. We stick to Prabhupada's books and Prabhupada's direct statements. And we take Prabhupada's statements as he tells us to take them. He tells us to take the direct meaning, Mukhya Vritti, as it can be understood from the dictionary definition. We don't try to impose an indirect interpretation on the Prabhupada statements. When he said planetary systems, that's what he means. You can't say, well, Prabhupada's saying planetary systems, but that's not what he means. He means something else. That's a Pukka Mayavadi, 100%. The acharyas refer to them as holes within the earth. Well, Prabhupada never refers to them as holes within the earth. And he never refers to the earth as a flat plane. He refers to it as a Bhumandal, as a planetary system. The acharyas refer to them as holes within the earth rather than 7 layers of planetary systems. No, they don't. Prabhupada never does. Orbiting below the so-called Earth planet. So, what are the subterranean realms? The best way to think of these is to think of going down into a subway or an underground base, except that the Earth is much, much deeper than what we have been told. What Srila Prabhupada called 7 lower planetary systems are actually 7 underground realms below one's own feet. Look at that again. Pukka Mayavadi. Pukka Mayavadi. This is Pukka Gona Vritti. Prabhupada, he says, what Prabhupada called 7 lower planetary systems, he's going to tell us what that means. But Prabhupada told us to take it directly, Mukhya Vritti. Prabhupada told us to take it directly as it can be understood in the dictionary. 7 lower planetary systems means exactly that. They are 7 of them. They're lower, they're below Bhumandala. They're below the planetary system Bhumandala, and there are 7 of them, and they're systems of planets rotating around the pole star. So that's how Prabhupada tells us to take it. But what you do is you say, what Prabhupada called 7 lower planetary systems are actually 7 underground realms. That's what you've just said then is classic Gonavriti. It's a indirect interpretation. You take Prabhupada's statement and you give your interpretation on it. That is unauthorized, not bona fide Mayavadi impersonalism, and it's rejected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada. The earth below our feet, however, is not a globe. The earth below our feet, however, is not a globe with a few 1,000-mile diameter. The great circle Earth has a diameter of 4 billion miles and the depths of 100,000s of miles. Right. So this guy's a Pukka Mayavadi, and anybody hearing him is doomed. Yeah, this Mayesvara is basically working for the Jews. He's presenting the Talmudic flat earth with the caverns underneath it, what they call it, the shoal, or whatever the shoal. It's identical. What he's presenting is identical. He's saying there's not only is he saying that the earth is, that the Bhumandala is not a system of planets, of which Bharatvarsha, which we are on, is one of them. He's actually saying that it's all flat, and underneath it, the earth is like going down, like with this it's like the picture that's shown here on the sides. So there's not only is there not a Bhumandal planetary system, but the other planetary systems below, they're not actually planetary systems, they're just part of the flat earth. This is the Talmud. This is the Talmud. This guy is presenting the Talmud, and all you fools are sucking it in the Mayavadi Bhasya.